Hello, this is Linda Vettrus-Nichols, and I have with me the most amazing person and husband, Terry Earthwind Nichols. Welcome, lover.
Thank you, my lover. Honored to be here. This is very cool.
Yeah, you interviewed me. I've never interviewed you, so this is a fun new thing to do, right?
Yes, I agree.
All right, so we are going to be talking about self-sabotage is a learned behavior. And so before that, I'd like you to introduce yourself and tell us your story of transformation in that area.
Well, a lot of people know me, but a lot of people on here are not going to know me. So I'm Terry Earthwind Nichols, and I have suffered from self-sabotage all of my life. It wasn't until just 8 years ago, while I was helping somebody else with their issues in life as a commissioned Stephen minister, that a hunch came to me that was the beginning of repetitive behavior cellular regression. And that is now global. We'll talk about it more here in a little bit. I'm excited to uh, help people all over the world. And this transformation for me has been amazing. I now have a school that teaches it and certifies practitioners and now master practitioners all over the world. So that's kind of my beginning story.
Yeah, that's a good one. And then after that, you created some master practitioners and had one of them bring actually both of us through the process that you created and we further developed. And, we were also able to be helped through the process. So that was very cool. All right. So self-sabotage is a learned behavior. All right. So what do you really mean by that, sweetie? It's a learned behavior.
Well, first of all, we have found that a significant emotional event occurred in early childhood that was amnesic in its makeup. In other words, you have amnesia around it. And if you're young enough, you don't know how to verbalize that to your parents or anything, what happened. And over time, there's a deflection defense system that gets to be matured in. And through that, um, PTSD, self-sabotage, a lot of other once diagnosed as diseases and such are no longer diseases. Actually, they're behaviors. Behaviors can be modified, and that's what we're talking about today.
Cool. All right. So behaviors, not disorders, is really kind of the point that you're making there. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, there's nothing broken in there. It's not a disorder at all.
Interesting. All right. And then stoppable. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, a behavior is you can change a behavior. You can stop a behavior rather quickly. The key is to remain present and focused that you're reinstituting a behavior once it starts to try to turn itself back on. Because your mind and your body gets used to this type of behavior over years and years and years, decades in some of our clients, that it tries to recreate it because it thinks it's normal. In fact, we have found that it's not. Mm-hmm. So it is, in fact, stoppable and permanently.
Mm-hmm. We often get asked, like, oh, is it NLP? And it's like, no, NLP is a modality, and what we do is not. And the difference is like talk therapy with psychologists, right? They're talking and going from the front of the brain back, and it's difficult to get very far. Modalities come in from the side and they find some layers and then they only get so far, and then maybe they find a different block here and there. But they're not getting down to that source, and that source is actually from the back of the brain forward, and something that happens usually pre-language, which is very fascinating to me as well. And I always describe it like the Christmas tree lights. So when we get to whatever happened way back when, that someone walled off in an amnesic-like state, it's almost as if you're unplugging a whole chain of Christmas tree lights, because the energy from that is actually drawing in new events. And that's how we started to study, well, initially PTSD and then complex PTSD. And the beauty of what we do is we don't talk about the PTSD event. We don't even need to. And that's why we've been successful there as well. And we did first start out in the coaching industry with this, with procrastination and self-sabotage, and then started getting clients with PTSD and then even complex PTSD. And it's just so cool how you just like unplug that energy that has drawn in similar repetitive events throughout a person's life. All right, so new patterns of behavior. We create a new neural pathway. Do you want to speak to that, sweetie?
Well, I'm not sure if it's new, but it's certainly an alternative neural pathway, because when we're searching for something, we disconnect the history of a memory that we're looking at. And when you disconnect the story or the history of a memory, you also shut off the motion of the memory. And key here is when there's no motion in a memory, there's also no emotion in a memory. And so with those two portions of memory recall disengaged, we are free to find other ways of going back in time without the distraction of the original amnesic event, what we call the active block. Mm-hmm. And so the new alternate neural pathway is created and further strengthened. You like to talk about how that's strengthened. I'll let you talk about that. But it's extremely interesting how we take side streets, if you will, to go back to a place that a person hasn't been to since it happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And the story in your head, and that's the story in your head just keeps it reinforcing that pathway. And it's interesting how you said, well, it might not really be a new neural pathway. So do you want to talk about that? It might not be a new neural pathway because you alluded to it already.
Yes. We've found that you take in a couple of million memories a day. And so there are many ways of going back in time that are associated with the way we were taught or linearly thinking to go back in time. And we use the same pathways each time when we retrieve a memory. But when we retrieve a memory using a different method, like we do in the CR process, then the pathway that was originally created is not used. Another pathway is used because the system of retrieval back to that time frame is adjusted.
Yeah, and when you use a pathway, you're actually building the myelin sheath on the pathway. And I look at that or describe that as like on a lamp, the cord, the electrical cord for a lamp, the plastic on it is quite thin. And the electricity doesn't have to go all that far because it's from the outlet to the light bulb. So when you use like an extension cord, think about how thick the plastic is on an extension cord. That electricity must go further. And the way to get it to go further is to get it to go faster. So the thicker the plastic on the wire, the further and faster it can go, the messaging can go. And so when you stop using a neural pathway, the myelin starts to dissolve, for what lack of better words, and thin out. And when you use a pathway, the myelin starts to thicken, and it's easy to retrieve it. And that, I would say a lot of that's going on in the PTSD story, playing over and over, thickening that myelin so that story just comes faster and faster, and stopping that story and going on that new, in my words, new neural pathway is actually strengthening, keeping someone out of emotion and strengthening that pathway. Does that make sense?
Yeah, Yeah, it's when people are involved, like what we say here, get off on the merry-go-round. That's the way my life was. It was a merry-go-round. I kept doing the same things over and over and over again. But when we slip logic into the emotion of the merry-go-round, we slow and ultimately stop the merry-go-round and step off, if you will, to take a different path. And key to that, like the slide says here, is staying fully present and removed from the emotion, which is huge.
It is. It is so huge. And that's been the most fascinating part of just like researching what it is that is actually working. I've been absolutely fascinated taking the copious notes and doing the comparisons. And I love it. So cool. Okay, so the CR process itself, it's about stopping the movie player. I can think of one gal who had, in her first memory, it was like at grandma and grandpa's cabin, and she was sitting on the end of the dock, and she was swinging her legs in the water, and we asked her if she could stop swinging her legs and just take a picture. And she's like, yeah, sure. So it's about freeze framing. That's one of the ways we get people out of emotion. Another way is to have their eyes closed. It was so interesting to see that when people open their eyes, they could easily slip back into emotion. And so keeping their eyes closed kept them out of emotion. And that shuts off that movie player. And like you referred to earlier, kind of that merry-go-round effect, right?
Yeah, key to the movie player is early on, as you know, Linda. We got them to close their eyes because people will look around. They'll be watching things that are around them and become distracted, and that keeps them from being fully present. Closing the eyes is key to shutting everything down. Absolutely.
Yeah, and another question we get asked, oh, is this hypnosis? It's like, no, far from it. People are fully present and out of emotion, which is like an amazing feat if you're working with someone with, say, PTSD, right, sweetie?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, as you know, we had a client who was in the throes of suicide, and we had, within just a couple of minutes, I had him completely calm and stayed that way for 3 hours while we took him through the CR process. And that's been 4 years ago now, and he has had no further suicide ideation.
Yeah, we also had a practitioner that taught a process, and she had a student, and she was going to take her through through our process because she was a little bit suicidal. She was dealing with suicide ideation, and she didn't get around to it, and that person had gotten worse, and she was to the point where she was afraid to take her through, and so she called us, and that was our first suicide ideation session. And yeah, she even became a practitioner. So whew, it's like so incredible. It blows my mind. All right. And we profile for stressors. That's been another fascinating thing that we've discovered. Like this one gal, every time she talked about her grandfather, her pinky toe came up. Literally, her pinky toe came up onto her other toe. I don't know if you can see that. Like that. Like, who can even do that on command, right? So we work with, I love the way you say it. You talk about the voluntary, involuntary. Say it the way you say it.
Right. What we look for is involuntary movement of voluntary muscles. And the pinky toe rolling up onto the fourth toe was huge for us. And it's been in more than one client over the years. Other things that have happened is we also measure fight, flight, freeze, and not so much nervous tics as the way people turn their head or move while they're talking about somebody. In their minds, they're perfectly calm, but their body may not be perfectly calm when they are in or around the person that we're seeking who's caused the significant emotional stress.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So when the feet like shift this way, that is what Terry's talking about, fight, flight, freeze. Yeah, it's just been so cool. I remember the time when we do this over like Zoom or Skype, and so it's online now. And originally we were doing it from our living room, and Terry, I was sitting off to the side of the client. Terry was facing the client, and he's like pointing at the client, and I'm like, what? And he's like, her earring's wiggling. You know, he's kind of motioning to me, and I'm like, because I couldn't see it. And then I leaned forward, and sure enough, when she was talking about her mom, her earring started to like vibrate, and it's just like, wow, we really are at the cellular level with a person who's fully present. It's just like, whoa. And people will ask us, well, is this about past lives? And it's like, you know what? If you believe in past lives, then the idea of like past lives, it's the same energy that you bring into this life. So we usually just find our clients staying in this present time. I guess maybe that's because we keep them fully present. We've had people pull up a past life memory, but and it's never been their, you know, what their active block was about. It was connected, the energy of it, right, sweetie?
Right. Now, key here, what Linda said, in case you missed it, only one dangling earring was moving. The other one was perfectly still. So
Yeah.
it's amazing what was triggering in that one ear that gave us that indicator that we were where we were supposed to be.
Right. Another evidence of, you know, we watch the different sides of the body. Left is mother, feminine, nurture. Right is defense, masculine. You want to speak to that a little bit more?
Well, way back in the ages when hand-to-hand combat was the norm, armies were trained to defend with the left and attack with the right.
Mm-hmm.
When a person picks up, if somebody was to hand you a infant, you would put the infant up to your chest, but you would do it on the left side, not the right, unless there was a real specific reason to put it up there. The infant would be over your heart so that there would be that connection, whether you consciously are aware of it or not. And so all of those, all of that knowledge and study of history that I've witnessed came to the fore when we were noticing people and how they were moving unconsciously. Mm-hmm. And so that's really huge. And the use of the five senses we'll talk about here in a minute further strengthens that theory.
Yeah, we even have a video out on YouTube about heart-to-heart hugs. Mm-hmm. Which is really, that was really fun to make. I got to flirt with my husband on that one. But if you're not hugging heart to heart, which is left cheek to left cheek, you're actually hugging liver to liver. And anger is stored in the liver. So we promote heart to heart hugs. And I find it fascinating that if you look at monks, they're not hugging heart to heart. It blows me away to see pictures on Facebook of monks. It's like, that's really different. All right, so using the five senses, that's another thing that has fascinated me. We don't let people like go into story. We don't let them go into description. It's just the facts, ma'am, just the facts. So when we ask what they are smelling in the memory, or if we ask them what they're hearing, it's interesting because the deflection system, you know, if you ask them what they're hearing and they say what they're tasting, all of a sudden it's like, no, you know, and we get them back on track. Do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Well, smell is the number one of the five senses for triggering memory recall. So we always start the first, the first question in the sequence is with smell. But what we key here is we want them to give us an inventory of what they smell, not any descriptors. I smell pizza. I smell smoke. I smell body odor. I smell aftershave. Whatever it is, one thing at a time, so that we keep them out of story and fully present on the inventory of what they're aware of only. And then we go on to hearing, taste, sight. We've learned some things about sight that are very interesting, and touch as well. And so not only do we ask them, can you tell me what you're touching? It's what's touching you, and then what are you touching as separate questions, which
Mhm.
has really been beneficial for us. Same with sight. Not only sight, what do you see? I see a camera in front of me. I see the office. Uh, uh, I see um, around me as well. So we want to know what's around them and what they're aware of in the memory as well.
Yeah.
Even it's not on the picture per se that you would be equating as they speak. So the
Yeah.
five senses are key in the inventory of a memory, not a story.
hmm And we only have them do about 3 memories, and then we start like weaving through the memories, and it's been fascinating. And whatever they have put there for wall of protection, it's almost like a sleeping dragon. And so through our questions, it's like la la la, it can keep sleeping, and it's very linear. It's very sequential. So if you're moving linear, it's like I got this. And then it seems to be like really stupid because it cannot track random. So when we start going randomly through and connecting the memories, it has no power, no control. That's been really interesting as well. You agree?
Yeah. Like when we're talking to new clients and we teach our practitioners as well, what we're what we're trying to excuse me, what we're trying to find is the back door into the memory where the deflection system is not aware that we're there, or until the client actually finds that door with our assistance and walks in to a memory that they haven't been back to since it happened
Yeah,
in their early childhood.
absolutely. And the outcomes have fascinated me. Like about was it like 3 months later, we had a client write to us an email and let us know. She said, I didn't tell you this when I went through the process with you guys. I was $30,000 in debt, and I want to let you guys know that I am no longer in debt and that I am doing what it is that I really want to be doing. And that was just such a joy to get a letter like that. Can you think of some other outcome stories from clients?
One client that was a prospect for over a year and a half, every time that she would talk to me, she would cry and hang up on me. And then she'd call again a couple of months later. And this went for about a year and a half. And finally, um, what had happened to her, she could recall being raped at 9. But I assured her that we would not go back and review that yet again. Well, one night, one Tuesday night, she called and she says, I don't care if we have to go through the rape scene. I don't care what we have to do. I just ruined another wonderful relationship. Only at the time, only 43 years old, and was on her third marriage, something like that. And key here is she had woken up since 9 years old and the rape every single morning in pain with that memory. And about 2 weeks after her CR session had successfully taken place, well, it was the next morning, excuse me. We
Yeah.
finished very late at night, about 1:30 in the morning. And I get a text about 6:30 in the morning. I joke with this because I thought it was my daughter texting me something, but it was her. And all it said was, I woke up this morning and I had no pain for the first time, 43 years old. And it was 9 years old that the rape occurred.
Yeah.
That is key to what happens. She had become so protective that she was going to be a victim again. She became a predator. She would actually predator her boyfriends and things like that, husbands, and they would eventually leave her.
Yeah. Yeah. Once you've been predatored, you will become the predator, and getting help getting through that stage of development, for lack of better words, the human
And
journey is very crucial. And we've even helped a family member with this that's been really special. So Terry's great niece had really developed like PTSD and was so miserable for like 2 months before we found out about it. There was a house fire in the neighborhood, and we were able to work with her, and she didn't trigger. It was so cool. I even interviewed her on her PTSD story after the fact, and she still didn't trigger. So that's been really beautiful for people, because triggering, it just feels so out of control, and a lot of people even just feel broken. And it's really beautiful to be able to tell people, no, you're not broken. We love Michelle Rosenthal's book, Your Life After Trauma. There's some great exercises and good follow-up from the CR process with that book as well. So very cool. All right, so let's review procrastination and self-sabotage, the story in your head, and just the CR process quick. Is there anything else you'd like to say?
Well, for those of you who are suffering and or know someone who is, and just about all of us who are watching this great webinar series that Linda's put on, that is a big deal. And you get to know that with the CR process, it will stop and it will not come back.
Yeah, it's so cool. And you have a gift for everybody. Evolve your business, 10 success tips for developing your authentic relationship marketing. And basically, we've put together, Terry and I are, we're in our early 60s. Actually, you're 65 now, right? So, yeah, 62 and 65. The old farts are putting together all our lives of business tips into one amazing gift for you.
Yeah, they're really great. The Linda told you about one of our clients who was deeply in debt, never paid herself, owned her own business for many years before going through the CR process. She now pays herself a salary. She went from $30,000 in debt to at the time that we talked to her about that she had $15,000 or $20,000 in savings, plus her business was really rocking, and she'd hired another full-time employee. So the stuff works.
Yeah.
And we're very happy to make this available to you because, well, I'll let you talk about relationship marketing. You really have a neat way of saying how that works, because it's not selling anymore. It's about creating a relationship.
Yeah, it's not like my page and I'll like yours. That's for sure. And what I love about that story is that we work with world leaders. They don't realize they're world leaders. This gal was working with horses and kids with special needs, so she hired some more social workers. So she replaced herself with 4 social workers who were equipped to work in equine therapy with the kids with special needs. And then she opened up her ranch to doing retreats, corporate retreats, and kind of working with women who run with the wolves type teachings, and her own teachings as well. So yeah, we love that about what it is that we do and who it is that we work with, and just very powerful people that they haven't really tapped into their power. They don't really even think of themselves as powerful. And it's really great to like open them up and give them the freedom that they deserve. As far as relationship marketing goes, it really isn't about telling people all your kudos and telling them what it is that you do and all your offers and things like that. They want to know who you are. And when I line up like 3 people that do the exact same thing, people are going to buy from you if they like you, and they're not going to buy from you if they don't. So the people are going to choose one of the 3 to buy from, and it has nothing to do with how good they are, what their pricing is. It's all about the relationship. If they resonate with that person, great, they're going to buy from them. So authentic relationship marketing is about finding your tribe. your tribe will come to you the more you let people know who you really are. And that includes swearing. Like, I don't trust anybody who doesn't swear. I really don't. I mean, you don't have to like swear like sailor. It's not the point, you know. I mean, if I swear, it's just like usually in jokes or whatever. And people who just like pretend they don't swear, they usually do, at least under their breath. So I don't trust people who don't swear. How about you, honey? What's your kind of thing?
Well, you know, I'm a profiler, so there's certain physical things that will show me whether or not I can trust someone. But as the goes by, really somebody who does curse once in a while is likely to be more trustworthy than somebody who's not, in my experience.
Yeah, and because you're a profiler, just profiling like heads leaning left and right, and that tells you a lot about people. You'll profile a lot of pictures on their Facebook page or whatever, and that's what you've taught me. I have always appreciated that tip from you.
Well, thanks.
Yep. And for me, I muscle test. I'm an educational kinesiologist, so I muscle test to find out where a person's vibration is, and I have found like what's the ideal client vibration for me. And so there's a lot of exercises and tips in this book, including like helping you with authentic pricing and how to set that up. There's some cool exercises in there for you as well. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in, and it's been a pleasure to interview you, Terry, my sweet husband.
Well, thank you, my darling. I just wanted to add one thing in there. Evolutionary healers, clients, and practitioners are in 12 countries, and our practitioners speak 7 languages to do the CR process in. So that's significant for those of you that have English as a second language. Maybe your primary language is one of the languages we use, and it will feel more comfortable for you if you want to reach out to us.
Yeah, that's been a pleasure to see happen as well. So go ahead and grab the gift, Evolve Your Business, 10 Success Tips to Developing Your Authentic Relationship Marketing, right out at our website, evolutionaryhealer.com. And thanks again for joining us. Bye-bye.
Bye.